If you're noticing your streams, views, likes, and engagement is going down, you're not alone. Everything is constantly changing with social media and Spotify, but I've got good news because you don't need a massive social media following to make six figures a year with your music. In fact, I was making multiple six figures a year for my music before Instagram and before Spotify. But I want to encourage you and inspire you that you don't need as many followers and streams as you might think to make a great living. And you might see these artists with like millions of monthly listeners, but they're actually struggling. And that's because they don't own their masters, right? Or they don't even own their publishing. You know, they've signed it away to a publisher, or they've signed their master away to a label. And the only reason I'm still able to make music and make a great living on it is because I own my masters, right? I own my publishing. And I just want you to know that you are one song away from just freaking blowing up. I'm telling you, it's happened to me many times before. It happened to me in Japan. It happened to me in the US. It happened to me in Canada, where just one song, whew, and each time they were different songs. One time it was a rock song, one was like a rock pop song, and one was like a hip hop song with a vocal feature on radio. And then we've had certain things happen on TikTok. So I want to encourage you, stay in the game. But here are 5 ways to make a living from your music without a huge following. Number 1 is touring and playing live shows. Now, there's so many artists out there gigging, playing, making six figures a year, whether they're at bars, clubs, weddings, busking maybe on the weekends, but they're performing. And every time I fly to the Nashville airport, there's always at least 2 to 3 people in that airport, right, performing and singing and getting paid for it. And the thing is that they've got a built-in audience and they're making money from it. And they're gigging at these different bars, clubs where they need you to come and perform. So you're getting paid to play, right? But maybe touring and maybe doing covers isn't your thing. But when we were touring, before I had a huge following, we were playing in schools, high schools, colleges with this built-in audience, sometimes getting paid and then selling a ton of merch. Same thing with churches where it was like a built-in audience, right? And so we didn't have this huge following, but we're able to do what we love, build it, get our music out there. And this is the thing. Just because I didn't have a big following didn't mean the music wasn't good, didn't mean I couldn't impact people's lives. Like, we're so afraid to start small, right? We always want to start here, but you got to understand, everybody starts at zero. So don't be afraid to start small. Just start, right? And you've heard me talk about this one a lot, is buying onto tours. You know, there's a lot of times where we slogged it out. We played shows by ourselves, but it was so much better just to buy onto someone else's tour. We're in front of way more people. And a lot of the times we made our money back with merch to more than pay for the fee, right? And then make money ourselves, but then go back there and tour again and play our own show, get paid, and sell even more merch, right? So sometimes you got to invest in the front and then make money on the back. Number 2 is songwriting. And I never thought or understood this or thought it was even possible, but that's mainly what I'm doing right now is making my living off of songwriting, which is songwriting for Manifest, and we release songs and make money that way, but also writing songs for TV and film, where I'm not paying the producer, I'm not, putting out any money, but I'm collaborating with other producers, and then we're writing for a specific thing, whether that's for a trailer, for a TV promo, or just some type of song that we're trying to get placed as a sync somewhere, and then we get paid for that. And what's wild is that, the payments from the sync can be huge. And we can have songs that maybe flop stream-wise on Spotify, but then we're making multiple 5 figures, sometimes 6 figures off of the sync placement. So just because the streams are low and it wasn't successful that way, it can be successful in another way. Now, this, of course, all takes time, right? Like it's been like maybe 5-6 years that I've really been focusing on the songwriting, more on the last 2 to 3 where I'm really just writing every single day, building relationships, meeting people, getting out of my comfort zone, right? Sometimes not even wanting to write because it's just even that gets frustrating, but that is a viable industry. And so what do? Well, you're going to have to contact the different producers, or if you're a producer yourself, and just start songwriting, start writing songs, study the game. Stop watching TV and sports and when you go to the movies, and start listening. I went and saw that new movie Twisters the other day, and I was listening to the music in the movie and I was listening to the music in the trailers. It's wild now that I'm into this, that I'm looking at things. I'm like, oh, that makes sense for that scene. What were the lyrics that were used in that scene? And it made me think about that. And I was like, wow, it makes sense. And it's now ruined movies for me for the rest of my life. Number 3, and that's becoming a producer or a mix engineer. And sometimes I wish this is what I did instead of being a touring artist for so many years, because, I get to produce, make the music, all the fun stuff, but then also have a piece of the writing, and I'm not the one who has to tour and market it and promote it and just get paid for it, right? But what you do is you become the one that's making the music and producing the artist, right? And if you're not getting hired for the gigs right away, one thing my buddy who's just crushing it with mixing is, first he started mixing like pretty cheap, and then he'd get booked up, and then he'd raise his prices, and then he'd get solidly booked up again, and then he'd raise his prices a little bit more. And he was training up this other mix engineer. He said, look, dude, if you want to get the chops, you got to do the stuff first. You got to do all the stuff that I'm going to teach you, and I'm going to get you to do all the different things. But then, you need to undercut. If some mix engineers are charging $500, you charge $250 so that you can get the reps in and get your name out there. And this guy was doing mixes just on spec, and then if the person dug it, then they got paid. If he didn't get paid. But he was able to get his reps in. And that's what I've had to do with songwriting. That's what I've had to do with touring. And that's what producers and mix engineers have to do. You got to get your reps in and get better. Be willing to do what others won't do today so that you can have a career in music that others can't have tomorrow, right? So we got to put in the work. Number 4, and I'm going to mix these two together, is crowdfunding and merchandise. Have you ever crowdfunded yet? Especially if you've never done one, I always say this to artists. It's not if you do a crowdfunding campaign, but it should be when. We've done like 7 or 8 of them now. And obviously the very first one can always tend to do the best because, a lot of friends and family have never supported you before. And you'd be surprised how many times they would support you, but you got to be willing to ask. You got to be willing to ask, and you got to be willing to ask them to support your vision. And that's where you need to know your why. It can't just be, I want to make a dope rock record. I want to make a dope hip hop record. Like, what's the message? What's the heart behind that? We have a whole crowdfunding secrets course on that and training that goes deeper into the heart and the reason, so that it doesn't become sleazy when you're asking someone to buy, right? Another thing that I've seen a lot of artists do before they have a following and just building it up around the brand is your own merchandise. Okay, we have this thing we're starting called No Plan B. It's one of my most popular songs, but we're making all this merch around it to encourage people. Look, you've come too far to quit now. Trust God. Don't have a plan B, C, D, and E. Stick with plan A, because God's got a plan to prosper you, give you a hope and a future. You've come too far to quit now. Remember why you started when you're thinking about quitting, right? Remember when you're thinking about quitting, remember why you first started. And we have all these messages around No Plan B. Go to manifestshop.com to pick up a No Plan B sweater, but to build merch that is bigger than just your music, right? Not just because it says your artist name on it. We sold tons of merch that just has, Manifest on it, right? I think I'm wearing a Manifest hat right now, right? So we've sold lots of that, but building something that's bigger than you, that has a message behind it, and start selling that. Because again, people want to buy and see themselves in what you're doing and in what they're doing, okay? Number 5. And again, this one I never thought in a million years, but it's teaching and workshops. Kind of like what I'm doing right now with music marketing, but I'll never forget being at home and I saw this artist that was pretty famous drummer for a pretty big band. And he's like, hey guys, I'm coming off tour. If you want to book drum sessions with me, I'm taking bookings right now. And then I saw another famous guitarist in another big band that I toured with. And he was like, hey, I'm doing guitar sessions over Zoom. Free lessons, or not free lessons, but paid lessons. And I was like, dang, that's really smart. And I was like, well, I can't play guitar. I can't play an instrument. What could I teach? I could teach songwriting or lyric writing or something like that, right? But you got to understand, you don't have to be the master. You don't have to be the best in the world to be able to help somebody. You just have to be one step further than them. I was helping out a friend. He's been producing, crushing it, doing so well, and he wants to start having his own thing on Spotify under his own artist name as a producer. And so I was helping him get his first Spotify account and claiming his profile. It might seem so simple to you because you've already done it, but how many hundreds, thousands of people are trying to do something that is just so natural to you because you've done it, but now you devalue what you know. You devalue your experiences when you could be charging for that and helping people. My whole goal when I started doing this smart music business back in the day is like, look, I just want to help people. I just want to make a difference. Obviously, I want to share God and what Jesus has done in my life, but I also want to share the marketing, the business, and the tips and help people avoid some of the tears and the potholes and the multiple six figures that we've, wasted, that we're learning lessons so that other people don't have to. And so why not, like my man Brendon Burchard says, become a millionaire messenger? Make a great living off of teaching while helping people and making a difference while you're working on your craft. And trust me, I felt the same way. It's like, oh, am I going to look weird or whatever? I can't do that. And, only teachers do that, teach because they couldn't make it in the real world. I'm looking at a plaque right now that has 130 million plus streams, but I've had those same doubts. And you know what? You're going to have doubts on all 5 of these things, and there's obviously tons more ideas and whatnot, but you miss every shot you don't take. And I said this earlier, but I hope it resonates. Don't be afraid to start small. Don't be afraid to start because everybody starts somewhere.